You must love podcasts if you're listening to this. Do you want to start your own one or you already have one? Then follow Smarter Podcasting to get expert advice from me, Niall Mackay, the podcast guy. Since 2019, we've worked with over 40 podcasters, produced over 700 episodes, and helped many podcasts get to the top of the Apple Podcast charts. And right now, I'm offering you a professional edit for just $27. Click the link in the show notes. Are you a content creator looking for an efficient and powerful editing tool? Then look no further than Descript. Descript simplifies the editing process for audio and video content, allowing you to write, record, transcribe, and edit all in one platform. I started using Descript several years ago and it changed the way I podcast. I still can't believe what I can create from my desk at home and the features they keep adding, including video editing, so you can get your podcast on YouTube. Best of all is the studio sound feature, which turns my original audio, which I'm recording right now, in a big echoey room with my wife in the background doing the dishes, the front doors open. And even though I'm using a really good microphone, the Shure SM57, when I turn on studio sound, it turns it into this. But don't just take my word for it. The Pod Sound School appreciates how it eliminates the sucky parts of podcast editing, which I couldn't agree with more. When I started using Descript, I started to enjoy podcast editing, and I still do to this day. Podcasters, video creators, and journalists who use Descript include Jordan Harbinger, Vox Media, The New York Times, Gimlet Media, and Wired. Join the ranks of satisfied content creators and try Descript today. Go to 7millionbikes.com/promos. That's 7millionbikes.com/promos, or click in the show notes and you can get 1 hour of free transcription per month for free to try it out. And if you do join up, then 7 Million Bikes Podcast will get a small commission, which will help me create these episodes for you. Cheers. Welcome to another episode of Smarter Podcasting with me, Niall Mackay, the podcast guy. I'm here to help you build your community and connect with your audience no matter what stage you're at in your podcasting journey. I want to make sure that every episode has value in it that you need whenever you need it. Now, one of the things I also really want you to do is please give me some feedback. Let me know what you think of each episode. Let me know what you think of the podcast. Let me know if there's anything you want to hear about, and I will make that episode. So I recently just launched a listener messaging service, and I shared it on my social media, and I shared it with people that I knew listened to the podcast. And I was excited to get my first listener message from Alan Brownbridge about the last episode we just recorded about the truth about SEO. Now, I was a little bit worried about how that episode would be received. If you do listen to that episode, it doesn't have a number, but if you go back, you can find it, The Truth About SEO. It wasn't actually what we intended to talk about. I wanted to talk to Ian about my course, because he's one of my course students, and why you should do that. And you should, if you haven't already started your podcast and you're looking to find out how to start your podcast, go check out my course. The link is in the show notes. But we ended up talking about SEO, and it's something that has annoyed me for a long time, and it came up in this episode. Those 3 words, optimize for SEO, I still see them every day as advice to what you should do to build your podcast. That's it. 3 words, optimize for SEO. Now, if you haven't listened to that episode yet, the truth is that's not that easy. You have to hire an agency. It's much more complicated than just changing the titles of your episodes or changing your show notes. It's a much more difficult strategy than just optimize for SEO. So when I saw that Alan had left me a message, I was a little bit scared because he is an SEO expert. And so let's hear what Alan had to say.
Hi, Neil. I listened to your podcast about SEO for podcasters. I thought it was great. I'm definitely going to take some of your tips and use them in my own content creation, especially the one about having a pillar piece of content that you can use to split down into everything else. And I really enjoyed your guest. It was really nice to hear him talk about SEO. And I think one of the things you said is really important to highlight, that you need to do that keyword research before you start planning and writing your articles and your pages. And of course, you need a website, number one. So yeah, thanks for the podcast. I really enjoy listening to you, and I love the way that you present it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alan. So that's our first ever listener message. If you do go in the show notes, you'll be able to find the link and you can leave a message, and I want to hear from you. But a massive thank you to Ian Painton, who was the guest on that episode. So on to today's episode. As you've read by the title, when you were scrolling down and you were like, oh, that one's for me. Building on Optimize for SEO, I want to share with you 25 different ways that you can build your audience and connect with your community in just 25 minutes. There are so many different ways that you can do that, and we're going to go through it as quick as we can, and I'm going to give you a little hint. One of them is Optimize for SEO. So whether you've just started your podcast or you've already had one, you may feel like you're struggling to build an audience. It's the number one thing I read people asking for advice on all the Facebook groups, and it's the number one thing that I thought about since the beginning and I still think about now. But don't worry about preaching to an empty room. If you follow these 25 tips, and what I would say to you is write them all down, or even better, I'll put a link in the notes to a checkbox. Take that checkbox, print it out, and then tick it off one by one. If you even can do 10 of these, you'll be on the right path to building your audience and connecting with your community. While it can seem overwhelming with the amount of podcasts out there, and there are around 2 million active podcasts at the moment, there are only 250,000 new episodes every week. And you're saying only, if you think about the amount of blogs, the amount of websites, the amount of content that's out there from Netflix to Hulu to Amazon, only 250,000 active podcasts per week is not very much. But we do want to make sure that yours stands out from the crowd. Let's go through 25 things to build your podcast in 25 minutes. So number one, define your target audience. Who is your podcast for? Now, if you did listen to the episode with Mark Steadman, you'll hear about creating a listener persona. I would completely recommend going to do that now before you start. And if you have already started, it's not too late. Who are you making the podcast for? How old are they? What do they look like? What's their job? What's their income? What passions do they have? And what solution are you giving them? What problems do they have that you want to solve? This is the biggest thing that you can do. Give value in every single episode to the listeners that are coming to your show to solve a problem. By putting in the effort to define your audience, you can build a loyal following that will help you build your audience and achieve your goals. Number two, create high quality content. It goes without saying, you don't need to spend a lot of money. Just make sure that you have a decent microphone, some decent editing software like Descript where you can turn on the studio sound and it will make you sound like you're in a studio. Your listeners will thank you for it. As I mentioned, there are so many podcasts now. Putting out subpar audio just won't cut it these days. Give your audience the best podcast that they deserve. Number three, and you might have heard this before, but is consistency is key. Decide now how often you can post. Is it every week, every month, every 2 months? Whatever it is that you can manage, choose that now and then stick to it. Then choose the day and choose the time. I've not really seen any data to say when is the best time to post your podcast. Remember, people can listen to your podcast when they want to, not when it comes out. But just be consistent so people know that it will be there when they want it. And consistency doesn't just mean the timing of it, it means the quality of it. You need to produce a quality episode every single time. If you drop your quality for just one episode, you could lose your listeners immediately. Number four, optimize for SEO. But I'm going to tell you what that means. Go back and listen to the last episode with Ian Painton and you'll find out exactly what it means. The number one thing is get a website, create a blog for every single episode that you do, and do a little bit of keyword research if you can. But just think about what terms are other people in that niche going to be searching for to find your podcast. Number 5 is engage with your listeners. Build a community. Make your listeners feel part of your podcast. I'm already doing it. I've asked you to leave me a message. I've already had a listener send me a message. It's the biggest thrill when I hear back from listeners. It's a strange format, making a podcast. Doing this on my own right now. I'm talking into a microphone with nobody around me, apart from my dog, and she just thinks I'm strange. It's a weird thing. So hearing from people who listen to this is the best thing ever, and it will help you build that loyal following by creating a community around your podcast. So engage with your listeners, ask for feedback on social media and during the episode. So please send me a message. The link is in the notes. Number 6 is, of course, use social media. But again, most of these tips could be a podcast episode in their own right. I hate it again when you see these blog posts or these YouTube videos or these podcasts and they tell you to do something, but they don't tell you how to do it. We'll do a future episode on using social media because that is a massive, massive job in itself. There's a reason why people have jobs that just do social media. Choose one platform that you use the most, whether it's LinkedIn if you're a business, Facebook if you're a boomer like me. I guess I'm nearly a boomer. Or if you're a Gen Z, use Instagram. Use one of them, post on there frequently. And as always, just remember, give value. Don't do that thing where you post, new episode out today. You don't want to miss this. This is the best yet. OMG. Oh my goodness. It's so cliche. Please don't. And my biggest tip, if you are on Facebook, start your own Facebook group. You can also do Discord or Slack, but start your own community online and invite your listeners to join. Go join Smarter Podcasting Facebook group. Now, number 7 might shock you. But in a study that I read recently, this is the number 1 way that people find out about other podcasts. And it's the good old-fashioned word of mouth. Now, you're probably thinking, well, how do I make somebody tell somebody else about my podcast? Well, it goes back to number 2. Make good content. Make stuff that you're passionate about. And people will feel that enthusiasm and they're going to want to share it with other people too. But also, make it easy for them on your website and get a website. Have all the sharing buttons there so people can share it. Make all the links available on social media. Make it as easy as possible for people to share your episode. So make sure you go to 7millionbikes.com/smarter podcasting, find this episode and share it with as many people as you can who want to create their own podcast or want to build their own audience and you think that this will be helpful for them. Go. Now, what are you waiting on? Number 8, I've already touched on it. You need a podcast website. Most of the host platforms like Buzzsprout will already create a website for you. And to be honest, they're pretty awesome. The only thing is you can't really adjust them too much to your own preferences. They're quite set how they're designed. But to be honest, they're pretty awesome anyway. So make sure at the very least you're using the website that comes for free with your host platform. And the biggest tip is to make sure you change the domain name. It doesn't cost much. I use 7millionbikes.com. It costs me like $20 a year for that domain name. And then I can change that. And initially, before I had my own proper website, I used my Buzzsprout website, but I was able to redirect it to 7millionbikes.com. So I was able to share that. Now, the bonus tip here is you need to create a blog. You really, really do if you want to optimize for SEO and leverage your website. If you use your host website, you can add a blog to that. So that's why you really should get your own website if you can. And you know me, I'm Scottish. I like to do things on a budget. So do whatever you can with whatever budget you can. And I started with absolutely nothing. So just work on building it up from there. Now, number 9 is one of the most important things that you can do. It's cheap. I was going to say it's easy, but it's not that easy actually. But the number 9 is be a guest on other podcasts. And we'll talk a little bit about this later on. But marketing your podcast where other podcast listeners are is one of the most effective things that you can do. Go where the podcast listeners are. And the easiest way to do that is to be a guest on other podcasts. Even better, be a guest on other podcasts in your niche. And if you can't do that, get on any podcast you can, show your personality and talk about your podcast. Number 10 is cross-promote with other podcasts. And I use this to my great advantage in the beginning. I made so many great connections with other podcasts about Vietnam. So my first podcast was called A Vietnam Podcast because that's where I'm based. And it was about talking to people connected to Vietnam. I was able to connect with the Vietnamese Boat People podcast, which is based in New York. And we did what we call a pod swap. So I would actually take one of her episodes with her permission, obviously, added my introduction to it and played it to my audience and promoted her show. And she did the same for me. I gave her the audio of one of my episodes where she was the guest and she played it on her platform and promoted my show. Or you could just do a straight ad swap as well, where you contact another podcast. Doesn't have to be for money, but you could say, hey, if you do a 1-minute ad for me, I'll do a 1-minute ad for you. Again, you're getting in front of podcast listeners. Number 11 is attend podcasting events and conferences if you can. So again, everything is within your budget. I'm not saying you should suddenly travel across the country or across the world just to go to a conference or an event. But if there is an event near to you, go there, promote your podcast, talk to other podcasters, talk to other people, have business cards, share with people, tell people about your show. And if there aren't any events near you, create your own. That's what I did right here in Saigon in Vietnam. And now every month I have my monthly podcast meetup and anyone can drop by and we just talk about podcasts. I wanted to share with you about one of my favorite affiliate partners, and that is Fiverr. I've been using Fiverr for years for everything from ordering YouTube thumbnails to keyword research, writing podcast articles, even to Canva designs and thumbnails and more. So whether you're a budding entrepreneur, a podcaster, or anyone in between, Fiverr has got you covered. It really is the go-to platform if you want to find freelancers offering a massive range of services to help you on any project. Maybe you need a stunning new logo or just a short animation, whatever you need, you can find it on Fiverr. What I love the most is how easy Fiverr makes it to connect with talented freelancers from around the world, all at prices that will fit whatever your budget is. Plus, with Fiverr's secure payment system, you can trust that your transactions are safe and secure. No dodgy people you meet on Facebook groups that disappear with your money and never give you what you want. What, that's only happened to me? As an affiliate partner, I will get a small commission if you use the link and at no extra cost to you. As an affiliate partner, I will get a small commission if you click my link and you buy something, all at no extra cost to you. And best of all, you will be directly supporting the making of this podcast that you're listening to for free, but it is not free to make. So why wait? Head over to somewhere that you've probably never been before. It's called the show notes. So whatever app you're listening in, if it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything at all, head to the show notes, click on my special link, and then you can browse thousands of gigs ready to help you with your next project. Number 12 could almost be number 1. It's so important. Start an email newsletter to connect with your listeners. One of the number reasons for this is that you don't own your social media group. You don't know how the algorithm could change at any moment. You don't know if the company could go out of business and you've lost that beautiful audience that you've built up. Email marketing is the most cost-effective way to a market. And I know you're thinking, what? Emails, nobody opens them? They do. And they love to hear from you. So give something for free to your audience. And if you want something for free from me, go to the show notes and you can find my PDF, 7 Ways to Monetize Your Podcast. Once you sign up for that with your email, you're going to go on my mailing list and then I'm going to send you weekly updates on the latest podcast episodes, news and updates and how to build your audience and connect with your community. And it means I own that mailing list. That is your community. You don't have to, you're not at the whims of anyone else. So start an email newsletter now. Number 13, run a giveaway contest for your podcast listeners. This is a great way to engage and connect. Running regular giveaways is a great way to incentivize your listeners to share your podcast and stay engaged. So listen to the end of this episode and find out what my giveaway is going to be. Number 14, collaborate with brands in your niche. So if you have a podcast about DIY, don't go to the local McDonald's and ask for them to sponsor you. There's no collaboration there. But if you have a podcast about DIY, go to your local DIY store, ask can you put up some posters. You could even ask for sponsorship. Ask if you can collaborate with them to promote your podcast. and think local. Don't go for Pepsi or McDonald's or anything like that. Local businesses want to support local endeavors. My first sponsor was a local diner here, and they weren't doing it to get anything back. They just wanted to support me. So talk to your local businesses. I'm sure they want to help you. Number 15 is monetize your podcast. Now you might be thinking, well, if I'm asking for money, how does that get me more listeners? Well, more people can see what you're doing. You can give incentives like blooper reels and giveaways and special offers. So people are going to be more attracted to join your podcast and listen to it because they want more content. And by monetizing, obviously you can make more money, but you can use that to invest in your podcast, whether that be ads or better equipment to make better content and give more value to your listeners. Number 16 may be obvious if you already have a podcast, but I speak to many people who are just starting and they don't know what a podcast directory is. A podcast directory is where your podcast lives. Most people know of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google, but there's probably about 30 to 40 out there, from Acast to Spreaker to Podcast Addict. So when you do sign up for your host, make sure that you're on every platform available. Number 17 is use paid advertising, but stop. Don't go run a Facebook ad. The most effective paid ads to use is ads where the people are already listening to a podcast. One of the best ways to do that is on Acast. So go look up Acast, where you can buy ads for different genres. So like true crime, tourism, and then it will tell you the price of those ads and how many subscriptions they estimate that you will get. This is the most cost-effective way because you're advertising to people who already listen to podcasts. Number 18, use expert guests to get more listeners. We all know everyone loves a celebrity or a minor celebrity, somebody that they've heard of. So if you can get somebody on your show that is well known, then that's going to help you get more listeners. But be careful with that. You get your dream guest on your show and you think, oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to get so many listeners. And sure enough, after that episode, your listeners shoot up. Then the next episode comes out and it's back to your regular scheduling and the listeners go right back down to normal. Getting a celebrity guest can make a big bump, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get those listeners forever because they only tuned in for that one episode. So if you can consistently get guest experts on in your field, it's going to help more and more people come back to you. And this is why many of the top podcasts in the world are from celebrities with top guests that you know their names and you want to hear more from them. Number 19, similar to attending conferences, attend any live events that you can in your neighborhood. That's a great way to connect with people. Networking is number one. And like I mentioned, if there aren't any events, why not put on one yourself? Number 20, if you are watching this on YouTube right now instead of listening to it on a podcast, the reason is I started a YouTube channel to get more podcast listeners. My main asset is the podcast. I'm a podcast fanatic, but for smarter podcasting, I thought, why not start a YouTube channel? It's definitely a good way to boost your numbers and reach a wider audience. But just remember, YouTube is a completely different beast to podcasting, and it's going to double, triple, or quadruple the amount of time it takes you to create that content. Trust me, I know. So make sure you choose this decision wisely if you want to start a YouTube channel as well. But I definitely recommend it. Then number 21, like I mentioned, your podcast is your main asset. Then you want to break it down into that short form content for Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and TikToks as well. Just remember, many people might only see your micro content, but they will still love it. One of my favorite things is to watch little clips on YouTubes of shows that I love, like Tonight with Seth Meyers. I never watch the full show, but I religiously every day watch that 10-minute monologue because it's so funny. Think about how much money they must make out of just those YouTube clips as well. You can monetize those shots as well. It does take a lot. You need a lot of views, but it is possible. And it's also a way to build your podcast universe. So don't just think about your podcast itself. Think about how you can connect with a wider audience. Number 22, get featured in the media if you can. Reach out to your local newspaper and see if they want to feature you. Tell them about your podcast. Tell them what it's about. Tell them how amazing you are. And if you can get featured there with a link, especially if you get featured in an online news source, make sure that they link to your podcast. That's going to be amazing. 23, ask for reviews. Remember, we all go on Yelp, we all go on TripAdvisor, we all read the reviews to see if where we're going to eat tonight is any good. Podcasting is no different. When people come across your podcast for the first time, one of the first things they're going to see is your rating and your reviews and see if it's any good. So if you do enjoy this podcast, please go leave a review right now. That would mean the world to me. Be honest. Let me know what you think. Let other people know if this podcast is worth listening to. Let me know if this podcast is worth listening to. Number 24, if you do live far away from where there are live events, host a virtual event. That's an amazing way to connect with people around the world. And I know that during the pandemic, when we were all stuck at home, I was running quiz nights, comedy nights. I was talking to podcasters from around the world. I was doing amazing interviews with people. So if that's something that's a good option for you, get on the internet and do a virtual event to connect with people and connect with your listeners. One of the things about podcasting is your listeners are around the world. This is why I love podcasting. If I do an event tonight, the people that can be at that event are from my local area. When this podcast goes out, I know that people from here to Australia to America are going to be listening to this. That's amazing. So why not hold a virtual event where everyone can get together and you can meet and talk with your listeners? And last one, I've done a podcast episode about this. I don't know the number because I don't number them, but just scroll down a little bit and you'll find it. It's make sure you measure your success. So go to that episode and we talk about what are podcast metrics, how to analyze them, what do they mean, and how you can use them to grow your show. So look at all of those metrics and see. Measuring your success is crucial in understanding what works and what doesn't work. See what episode titles get the biggest views. Do the episodes that you do by yourself like this, or do the episodes with guests get more views? Which ones do your listeners like the most? Then make more of that content to keep building your listeners. So that was 25 tips to build your audience in, I think, about 25 minutes. I hope that has helped you. I hope you've taken some notes from that. And if not, like I mentioned, I promised you, I will put a PDF in the show notes that you can print off with 25 tips, and then you can tick them off as you go through them. And remember, I want to hear from you. Leave me a message. That is also in the notes. Tell me what you thought of this episode. Was it any good? Did it help you? What are you going to use? What are you not going to use? What would you like to hear from in future episodes? I mentioned I was going to give a giveaway. For the first 3 people to leave me a review on either Apple Podcasts or a rating on Spotify, because you can't leave a review on Spotify, but if you leave a rating, take a screenshot and then send that screenshot to me, or even better still, share it and show it. The first 3 people to show me these reviews, I'm going to give you a free half-hour consultation. So please help me out. Rate, review the show. Don't forget to follow and subscribe as well so you don't miss an episode. And I will give the first 3 people to leave a review a free half-an-hour consultation, whether you're starting your podcast or you're already far along on your journey. And just remember as well, if you are just starting out, you can check out my podcast course called How to Start a Podcast, Get Your Voice Out, and Share Your Story. I spent a year developing this course because I wanted to have it all in one place for somebody to join me on this podcasting journey. Podcasting changed my life. It opened doors for me that I could never have imagined, and I wouldn't be where I am today without it. I want you to join me on that, make an amazing show, give amazing value, and change your life as well. So in the show notes, you can go there and sign up for that course. You'll go from a podcast beginner to a podcast expert in as little as 1 week. But it's over 3 hours of video content, 23 lessons, PDFs, templates, everything you need to get started. And I will be right with you the whole time by your side. At any moment, you can email me, message me, and I'll be able to give you all the support that you need. So thank you very much for listening to this episode of Smarter Podcasting, and I'll see you soon.
Hi, my name is Sal Jeffries. I run the Mindset, Mood and Movement podcasts. I've been working with Neil at 7 Million Bikes for the whole of this year, literally from the start of my podcast to date. And I want to say a couple of things. So when we record the podcast, sometimes there are things that I need tweaking. There could be edits or clips. It's really simple. I give those instructions to Neil, he gets it sorted. There's sometimes a sound level differences between the guest mic and mine. Again, That's all sorted so the outcome is a really balanced sound. And also if there are issues with voice, little kind of sound interruptions, all those things that can distract a listener, Niall knows exactly what to do, cleans it up. The end result, a highly professional, beautiful sounding podcast without distraction. That's exactly what I want. I know my listeners do. So if you're interested in having that level of podcast and that kind of quality, Niall is a great guy and I highly recommend you speak to him.